Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
The molecular basis of skeletal muscle contraction. Muscle generates force and movements. By controlling the muscles, the human mind expresses itself through movements, through speech, through writing and other artistic expressions. The muscles are stimulated by means of the transmission of nerve impulses from the neurons across the neuromuscular junction. So, the process by which this action potential in the neurons passes on to the skeletal muscle fibers and the generation of action potential in the skeletal muscle fibers further leads on to the contraction of the skeletal muscle fibers is called as the excitation contraction coupling. So, to recollect the steps of neuromuscular transmission, this picture shows the ends of the neuron, the presynaptic nerve terminal and the postjunctional folds in the neuromuscular junction with the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors and the voltage gated calcium channels present in the presynaptic nerve terminal and the vesicles loaded with the neurotransmitter which is acetylcholine. So, the arrival of action potential at the nerve terminal leads to the entry of calcium ions via the voltage gated calcium channels and this causes exocytosis of the vesicles and release of the neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft which binds to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors which causes entry of sodium ions because the receptor itself functions as a ligand gated ion channel which causes entry of sodium ions leading on to generation of a local potential called as end plate potential. This local potential further stimulates opening of the voltage gated calcium channels present on either side of the membrane leading on to generation of the action potential. So, this is how a neuromuscular transmission causes generation of action potential in these skeletal muscle fibers. So, the presynaptic nerve terminal which is stimulated leads to the excitation of the postjunctional membrane of the skeletal muscle fiber. So, the action potential which is generated in the skeletal muscle fiber, initially it will be at a resting state of minus 90 millivolts, further leading on to the action potential which happens for a duration of about 2 to 4 milliseconds. So, this action potential leads on to the contraction of the skeletal muscle fibers and the duration of contraction varies according to the type of the muscle fiber. Usually it is from about 5 milliseconds up to 200 milliseconds and the refractory period of the skeletal muscle fiber is also very less because the duration of action potential is very small when compared with the duration of the muscle twitch. So, a second stimulus if it is given beyond the absolute refractory period which is about 2/3 of the action potential can cause summation of contractions of the skeletal muscle fiber and increase in the amplitude of the contraction of the skeletal muscle fibers. So, the action potential which is generated in the extracellular fluid via the neuromuscular junction passing on to the skeletal muscle fiber, the skeletal muscle fibers are very large. So, these action potentials to penetrate deep into the skeletal muscle fibers, it needs some specialized modifications which are required. So, likewise there are presence of T tubules present in the skeletal muscle fibers which are nothing but the extensions of the sarcolemma or the plasma membrane of the skeletal muscles which penetrates deep into the skeletal muscle fibers in a transverse direction. The action potentials can pass into each muscle fiber. As we know, the skeletal muscle fibers do not have any gap junctions. So, each single skeletal muscle fiber has to be stimulated and the entire length of the muscle fiber, the action potential has to be passed. So, for that we have the presence of T tubules which can facilitate this process of transfer of the action potential into the skeletal muscle fibers. These T tubules can also be branched extensively among the skeletal muscle fibers. So, the T tubules and the sarcoplasmic reticulum which is present within the muscle fibers on either side of the T tubules, they form a sarcoplasmic triad. So, this is called as the triad of the skeletal muscle fiber, and this system is the one which is going to be responsible for initiation of contraction in the skeletal muscle fiber. So, this is the invagination of the T tubule and the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The sarcoplasmic reticulum has got a longitudinal tubule and a large terminal cisternae. So, that there are two sarcoplasmic reticulum present on either side of the T tubule. Now, the action potential which is generated in the skeletal muscle fiber will pass down deep into the T tubules, and it causes activation of a receptor which is present in the membrane of the T tubule, which is called as the dihydropyridine receptor, DHPR. So, this dihydropyridine receptor is actually a L type of voltage gated calcium channel. Though it is a voltage gated calcium channel, in skeletal muscle fibers, this dihydropyridine receptor do not actually function to cause entry of calcium channels. Instead, it undergoes some conformational changes within itself to stimulate the action to receive the action potential and to cause stimulation of the sarcoplasmic reticulum which is by the side for the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, to facilitate that, there is another receptor present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum which is called as the ryanodine receptor. So, this ryanodine receptor has got the name because it is inhibited by the plant alkaloids called as ryanodine. So, this DHPR and the RYR, the dihydropyridine receptor and the ryanodine receptor interaction leads to conformational changes within itself which is causing protein-protein interaction, leads to the release of calcium ions because sarcoplasmic reticulum has got enormous stores of calcium ions within itself. So, arrival of action potential leads to the release of calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the myoplasm. The normal intracellular fluid concentration of calcium ions is about 10 to the power minus 7 molars. The stimulation of the sarcoplasmic reticulum leads to the efflux of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the myoplasm, which increases the concentration of calcium ions in the cytoplasm to about 500 times which was already existing. So, this amount of calcium is more than enough because it can cause, it is the amount of calcium which is required to cause contraction to up to 10 times that is required for a single contraction to happen. So, that much amount of increase in calcium ions happens in the cytoplasm which is called as the calcium pulse. So, this series of calcium pulse which is happening leads on to the contraction mechanism via binding to the troponin C molecules. The series of steps, there will be series of steps followed by this which leads on to the contraction of the skeletal muscle. So, this extrusion of calcium, the cross bridge cycling and the mechanism of contraction happens, after which the excess calcium which is present in the myoplasm has to be taken back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum by means of a presence of a pump called as SERCA, sarco-endoplasmic reticular calcium ATPase. So, the excess calcium will be taken back by the SERCA into the sarcoplasmic reticulum and it will be stored again. So, calcium reuptake will lead to the decrease of calcium levels in the cytoplasm, thereby causing relaxation. So, this is how the triad, the sarcoplasmic reticulum and the T tubules participate in the contractile mechanism of the skeletal muscle fiber. So, to go into the details, so contraction actually does not mean exactly shortening of the muscle fibers. There is actually no relatively change in the length of the filaments. So, this is the structure of the sarcomere which consists of the actin filaments and the myosin filaments. Actin filaments are the thin filaments and myosin filaments are the thick filaments, and actin filaments are anchored to the Z lines and the myosin filaments are present in the center, and the width of the myosin filaments is called as the A band and it is intersected by the M line. So, this is how it is seen in the electron microscopic picture, and it is a regular arrangement of the thick filaments over the thin filaments. During contraction, the thin filaments moves towards the thick filaments and they cause overlap of thick filaments and the thin filaments. The width of the A band remains the same and the actin filaments or the Z lines move closer to each other towards the M line, thereby causing contraction of the muscle fibers. Before contraction, there is no interaction between actin and myosin. The actin filaments are actually covered by tropomyosin molecules as well as troponin molecules. So, this troponin tropomyosin covering of the actin sites keep the myosin binding sites of actin covered, so that the actin myosin interaction cannot happen. And the myosin cross bridges are also present with the arm and the head exposed. So, for the actin filaments and the myosin filaments for to slide each other, this hindrance have to be removed. The myosin chain consists of the arm and the two heads, and the head region we have the ATP binding site and actin binding site. So, this head is actually present in an angle with the arm of the myosin, and the arm, there will be actin molecules present above this myosin filament, and the head will bend towards the arm, which is called as the cocking of the head during the cross bridge cycling during the actin myosin interaction, which leads to the sliding of the thin filament over the thick filament. So, after the power stroke or once sliding has happened, again the head will move away from the arm, which is called as the recocking of the head, which leads to the detachment of actin and myosin. So, this cocking and recocking of the myosin head is what is responsible for the sliding of the thin filaments over the thick filaments. So, before the actin myosin interaction can happen, there needs to be removal of this steric hindrance from the actin molecules, and the active sites need to be exposed. So, what happens is, the increase in calcium levels in the cytoplasm happens. This calcium will bind to the troponin C subunit of the troponin molecules. So, those troponin C subunit has got 4 affinity sites for calcium. So, 4 molecules of calcium can bind to a single troponin C molecules. So, when the calcium binds to the troponin C molecules, the troponin I, which is inhibiting the tropomyosin, which is covering the actin, is removed, and the tropomyosin will be moved into a deeper groove between the two filaments of the actin molecules. So, now the actin binding sites will be exposed, which is going to cause actin myosin interaction. So, how exactly this cross bridge cycling mechanism happens? So, cross bridge cycle or the sliding filament mechanism or walk-along theory, there are so many names for this, which is found out by a scientist named Huxley, and this theory tells that how the chemical energy which is stored in the myosin molecules is then converted into a mechanical energy. So, initially before contraction, the myosin and the actin are remaining in the detached state. The actin with the myosin in the present in an energized state. The myosin is already present in an energized state, that is the ATP is hydrolyzed and the ADP and phosphate, but it is not yet released as an energy, it is still bound to the myosin molecule. So, this myosin is called as a myosin in energized state and the actin molecules above it. After which the actin myosin interaction happens and the head will bind to the active sites of the actin. The actin myosin interaction happens and still the power stroke has not yet happened because the ADP and phosphate are still attached to the myosin molecules. After which the ADP and phosphate groups are released, the energy is released, the actin myosin interaction happens, and we can see how the head is tilted towards the actin molecules and there is sliding of this actin molecule over the myosin filament. So, this is called as a single power stroke, one power stroke happens. After which the next detachment of actin myosin molecules happens by means of binding of another ATP molecule to the myosin. So, when a new ATP molecule binds to the myosin head, there will be detachment of the actin molecules from the myosin, which leads to the cessation of the cross bridge cycle. Again, further which this ATP will be, which is bound to the myosin, will be hydrolyzed again, and the myosin goes back to the energized state. So, as long as the calcium is available, as long as the calcium is available, as long as the ATP is available in the cytoplasm of the muscle fiber, this cross bridge cycle will repeat, will produce another power stroke. So, the series of cross bridge cycle and series of power strokes keeps on happening, and it keeps on leading on to the sliding of thin filament over the thick filaments, finally leading on to the increase in force of contraction in the skeletal muscle fibers. So, this is how the chemical energy which is present in the filaments are converted into a mechanical energy for the contraction to happen. So, once the contraction is over, as I told you already, the as long as the calcium is available, the contraction will be continuing. So, decrease in cytoplasmic calcium is essential for the muscle to relax, for the relaxation to happen. So, how it happens? There is excess of calcium which is already present in the cytoplasm of the skeletal muscle fibers. So, as we know already, this sarcoplasmic reticulum has got a pump which is called as a SERCA, sarcoendoplasmic reticular calcium ATPase. So, each SERCA is capable of pumping back 2 calcium molecules into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, this keeps on happening till the cytoplasmic calcium decreases to a low level. So, when the calcium levels drops down, the troponin again goes and binds back to the tropomyosin, and tropomyosin covers the active sites of the actin, and the actin myosin interaction stops and the muscle goes for relaxation. So, not just SERCA, there are other mechanisms as well which are present in the cell membrane of the muscle, which is called, one of them is the PMCA, plasma membrane calcium ATPase, and another one is the NCX, sodium calcium exchanger. Both these mechanisms also facilitate to extrude the calcium. Via PMCA, calcium molecules will be extruded out of the cytoplasm. Via the NCX, sodium calcium exchanger, a molecule of sodium is exchanged in exchange for calcium to the outside of the cell membrane. So, these mechanisms do play a minor role in reducing the cytoplasmic calcium levels. The main mechanism is by means of SERCA. So, in addition to the SERCA, there are many other proteins which are present in the sarcoendoplasmic reticulum, like calsequestrin, triadin, junctin, HRC, histidine rich calcium binding protein, and sarcolumin. So, these proteins, because the sarcoplasmic reticulum is already loaded with excess of calcium ions. So, to pump and store more of calcium ions from the cytoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, it needs some specialized proteins present within itself. For example, calsequestrin is capable of binding, one calsequestrin molecule is capable of binding up to 50 calcium molecules. So, that is how the excess of calcium is being sequestered within the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it is released into the cytoplasm whenever a muscle contraction or the muscle is stimulated and the contraction has to happen. So, junctin, triadin, all these things facilitate or help the calsequestrin and the SERCA to do this process, and sarcolumin is a protein which is facilitating the reuptake of calcium from the site, and it transfers the calcium molecule to the release site of the sarcoplasmic reticulum whenever it is required. So, these proteins also do participate in the sequestration and release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, the excitation contraction coupling mechanism starts with the action potential in the motor neuron, which leads to the transmission at the neuromuscular junction, which leads to the generation of action potential in the skeletal muscle, which spreads via the T tubules and release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This calcium binds to the troponin C molecules, uncovering of the active sites of the actin, and the cross bridge cycle happens. This cross bridge cycle causes actin myosin binding and sliding, which leads to the formation of a production of a power stroke. The cross bridge cycle repeats again as long as the calcium is available. Again, there is a detachment of the actin and binding to a new site of myosin molecules. So, each power stroke is capable of moving the actin filament up to a distance of about 10 nanometers. So, like this cross bridge cycle keeps on repeating and the contraction happens. So, the series of power strokes leads to the muscle contraction. Once there is a calcium reuptake via the SERCA, the cytoplasmic calcium levels drops down. So, there is a detachment of calcium from troponin C molecules. The actin myosin interaction stops, leads to muscle relaxation. So, this is how the muscle contraction and relaxation happens by means of formation of the power strokes. So, ATP is mainly the source of energy which is required for contraction of the skeletal muscle. So, ATP is required both during contraction as well as relaxation of the skeletal muscle. So, this ATP which is already available in the skeletal muscle is enough only for if the contraction has to last to about 2 to 3 milliseconds. Beyond that, the available existing ATP stores are not enough. So, if the muscle contraction has to be continuing, there need to be supply of fresh ATP and fresh phosphate groups for the muscle contraction for processing. So, for that we have other specialized mechanisms like phosphoryl-creatine. Phosphoryl-creatine supplies the phosphate groups to the ADP molecules so that new ATP can be formed, and this facilitates continuation of contraction for another 4 or 5 seconds. After which, if the contraction still has to continue, it is depending upon the process of glycolysis which leads to the production of ATP. Both aerobic glycolysis and anaerobic glycolysis can happen. Anaerobic glycolysis is the one which can generate up to 5 times that of ATP which is actually generated by an aerobic glycolysis. And also oxidative metabolism from fats and proteins also can lead to enormous generation of ATP for any long term sustained contraction to happen. So, this shows the length tension relationship in a skeletal muscle fibers. So, the tension developed in the skeletal muscle fiber depends upon the initial length of the sarcomere which is already existing. So, in the picture D, the sarcomere length is exceeded beyond the normal length of the sarcomere, and the actin and the myosin filaments are completely displaced away from each other. So, the contraction or the tension developed is almost 0 at this state. So, when the length of the sarcomere is optimal, which is about 2.2 micrometers, when the length of the sarcomere is optimal, there is some amount of actin myosin interaction can happen, and it can cause increase in the tension of the skeletal muscle fibers. So, when there is still continuous actin myosin overlap which is happening up to a length of sarcomere of up to 2 micrometers, still the contraction can increase, or it is at least sustained at the tension is sustained at a normal level. But if the overlap is going to continue, if the overlap is severe, then when the length of the sarcomere is decreasing beyond 1.65 micrometers, then the tension will actually decrease. And sometimes if the overlap still continues, it can lead to crumpling of the myosin cross bridges, and the length of the tension of the skeletal muscle can drop to even up to 0 levels. So, the idea is the optimal length of sarcomere is essential for a normal tension to be developed in the skeletal muscle fibers. Excess stretching or excess overlap both will lead to decrease in the tension in the skeletal muscle fibers. Rigor mortis is a condition which happens after death. Following death, it leads to stiffness of all the body muscles. Actually, the reason is after death, the available ATP which is already present in the skeletal muscle fibers will lead to formation of cross bridge cycle, formation of power strokes, and muscle contraction. So, this keeps on happening with the available ATP which is already there, leading on to severe contraction of all the muscle fibers in the body. The body attains a contracture state. Now, as we recollect from the cross bridge cycle, binding of new ATP molecule to the myosin is required for the cross bridge cycle to stop. So, that cannot happen because all the available ATP is already utilized for the contraction. So, new ATP molecule is not available for the relaxation mechanism to happen, thereby leading on to severe contraction and stiffness of the body muscles. So, after some few hours, due to the denaturation of proteins and destruction of muscle fibers, the muscle will start relaxing and stiffness of the body will disappear. So, this rigor mortis, which is a normal phenomenon which happens after death, has got a great medico-legal importance which helps to find the time of death of the person. Another condition which is called as a malignant hyperthermia, this is a genetic condition where there is a channel mutation with regard to ryanodine receptors. So, because of the ryanodine receptor channel mutation, it leads to some dysfunctioning of the ryanodine receptors which can cause abnormal calcium release. abnormal calcium release into the cytoplasm of the skeletal muscle, leading on to sustained, because as we know, as long as the calcium is available, muscle will continue contraction. The cross breed cycle keeps on repeating. So, because there is an abnormal calcium release, there is a sustained muscle contraction which keeps on continuing, leading on to increased amount of heat production, and the body temperature goes beyond the normal level, leading on to hyperthermia, and it can be a fatal condition. And of course, there are treatment for this which needs to be done for reviving the condition. Thank you.